Welcome to 365 Brothers, the podcast. Have you wondered who are the Black men that you pass on the street every day? What are their lives like? Well, in this podcast, we have an in-depth conversation with Black men from all across America and all walks of life. Listen to their stories, their experiences, their wisdom. I'm your host, Robin Shine. Get comfy. We're speaking with a Baltimore native who is recently retired from the death care services industry. And he'll share a little bit more about that and his work in funeral services. Without any other introduction, let's talk with Kevin Jenkins. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Miss Shine.
Oh, please call me Robin.
Certainly. Good morning, Robin.
So, Kevin, first, is there anything you'd like to share about yourself with our listeners?
Sure. I mean, just so people will know who's talking to them. I do have a wonderful, beautiful family. I'm married to a wonderful, beautiful woman. I have, let's say, 6 children, 2 biological, 2 step, and 2 that I had the privilege to raise. From all of those 6, I now have 8 grand and 2 great grand, and I have been blessed to be introduced to Christianity, so that I think qualifies me to at least say that I'm a Christian. Any hobbies that I have are cruising. I like to read. And I like to interact with the community and try to be as much a positive provider as I possibly can.
Oh, let me ask you, when you say cruising, there are like 3 different things that come up. So when you say cruising, what hobby is that?
Well, that's actually cruising. I mean, going out on the ships and spending 7, 8, 10 days, however long the cruise may be. Just going out and enjoying the water, the beauty of the water, the relaxation, the people. It's just a fun, good time.
Oh, wow. And when did you first get introduced into cruising?
Unfortunately, it was only in 2006. I mean, I'm 64 a month from today. So, we can do the math. That's 14 years ago. I wish I had known about it earlier. It was our desire to actually take our kids on a cruise this year for Christmas. We have a family Christmas outing, and it was our desire to gather all the kids and the grandkids and put them on a ship and just let them have a good time. So they would have that exposure. But due to the pandemic, we've had to put that on hold, but prayerfully, they'll find a way to eradicate that, and then we can plan to set sail again.
Wow. Okay, one last question about that.
Sure.
What destination or cruise was your all-time favorite so far?
Well, that's hard to say, but if I had to give you one, I think it would probably be the first one that we took. We took it leaving out of Fort Lauderdale. I can't remember all of the ports. Of course, I do know the Ocho Rio was one, somewhere else in Jamaica, but it was a New Year's cruise. And if you're a cruiser, there's nothing like a New Year's cruise. The whole ship's in a party, and they provided the big band on one level. They provided like the hip hop on another level, and then like maybe top 40 on one level. So the whole boat was just rocking for the New Year. It was really fun and incredible.
Actually,
not to mention,
that sounds great.
Yes.
You get to choose your New Year's experience, and not only that, you're not stuck with one. So you could big band from 9 to 10, hip hop until 11, and then bring it in with your top 40.
Exactly. Yes. However you chose to do it.
Well, thank you for that, because I'm certain there will be listeners who have never considered cruising as a way to bring in the new year, or just as a way of enjoying travel life. And so thank you for providing that. Anything else you want to share before we get into the questions?
No, that seems to be enough, I believe. I'm
Okay.
just a regular guy.
Okay.
Yes.
I will tell you this. In my experience, I have yet to meet a regular guy.
Okay.
So let's get into the questions. So, Kevin, what is your favorite song and why?
My favorite song. Okay. Because I have, as I explained a little earlier, had the opportunity to be born again, I really have to give you two favorite songs, if you don't mind.
I will accept two favorite songs.
Thank you. All right. Right now, and I think, I want to narrow it down because I like Leanda Johnson. She sings with such passion on the song Deliver Us. But prior to the Leanda taking that spot, I think I really, in my heart of hearts, I Love You, Jesus, which was by Lamar Campbell. I really love that song. That's on the gospel side. Now, on the secular side, I think it was Keep Your Head to the Sky. And I didn't know at that particular time in life that that was kind of really a mix between a secular and gospel or spiritual song. That was by Earth, Wind, and Fire. And that's years and years and years ago. But it's such a beautiful song. So between all of those songs, they're my favorite.
Excellent. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Can you say what it is about the lyrics of that song, like what it is that drew you, that has that song stand out? Because it sounds like it stood out even before you became a dedicated Christian.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Well, with Keep Your Head to the Sky, I mean, just Earth, Wind, and Fire in itself is just um, enough. I mean, they were such a tremendous band. They had such a beautiful blended harmonic sound first, which I think is probably a great attraction for any song. But then as you learn the words and in repetition, you kind of learn the words. I was maybe a teenager when I was exposed to that. So I really didn't have the spirituality that I have now. So I really couldn't, equate it to what it was really speaking to. But just the music and the singing, I guess, was really honestly the true draw at that time. But now, as I go back and listen to it, I understand the spirituality that was a part of it, and just telling people to keep your head to the sky, keep looking up, and that's so necessary, especially during these times.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. There's a song Stevie Wonder did, and right now the name of it doesn't come to mind, but I remember listening to it recently and hearing the deeper spiritual meaning underneath, and was like, what, all these years? I didn't
Yes,
realize.
yes, yes. Yeah,
Mm.
Stevie is another artist that is just phenomenal, a genius. And like you said, he's done some songs that have just really speak to your spirit and give you a bright outlook on life.
Yes.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Um, what is a favorite childhood memory?
Well, to tell you the truth, it involves my dad. One thing was actually going out and going fishing with him and him teaching me how to fish. That was just so enjoyable. We got to spend time together, and he taught me the for lack of a better term, the art of fishing, or the sport of fishing. So you can always feed people if you know how to fish. And I don't even eat fish, but I can feed everybody else.
Oh, goodness.
Right. But the greater joy with me, if I had to really talk about it, was my father was a pioneer in the affirmative action program. And he worked in affirmative action. The portion that he worked in was dedicated to ensuring that people that were contracted with the United States government in trucking and busing had a representation of Black people that was proportionate to the community. And prior to that, as I sat down and listened to him, because his job was a contract compliance specialist. That was the name of the position that he had.
Mhm.
And it was always the topic of conversation at dinner when he was home, because he traveled quite a bit doing reviews on different companies. But when we did have the opportunity to sit down and have dinner together, the conversation was 99% about the experiences that he had dealing with the companies, the pushback, and just the mere fact that, the companies did not want to hire minorities. And it was so enlightening, and it really was, I guess, formative for me at that time. And unfortunately, after a while, it got bastardized with people, just using it to fit their particular necessity. But it was the design of it, and the fact that it was necessary, and the intended use of it was just beautiful. It just got used like everything else normally does.
And can you say more about how it got used?
Well, I mean, they used it with white women using it, fitting into the minority and the equal rights area during that time, because equal rights was a big when the Affirmative Action program was implemented. And then you had the universities with the students using it, trying to gain admission to universities that were non-minorities. So it really just got twisted around for a different narrative. And it wasn't necessarily because those people actually felt that they needed that assistance as we know the minorities did, because prior to the reviews, you may have a community that had maybe 14, 15% Black population and 2% people in positions that really meant something in the companies, or even in the company period. So I don't know how you can have a community set up like that, be taking fundings from the government, and then not at least make provision to at least represent the community that you're serving. And that was not going on at all prior to that Affirmative Action program.
Like, how would you say those conversations impacted your general view of the world, or how you walk through the world?
Well, I think we were blessed because my dad worked in the post office. He started off as a clerk, and he worked his way through, and he worked hard, and he made great provision for our family. So it gave me the opportunity to be on the sidelines looking, you know what I mean, and absorbing. It really gave me the opportunity to understand how race relations were taking place in this country, how we needed to fight to, better the race relations, and just our mere existence as Black people. You can't do anything if you can't feed your family. And if you're being kept out of the workforce, it just continues to create an environment that is criminal-ridden, drug-ridden, just not productive at all, and it keeps people in a mode of survival. And if we're in our own communities, we're surviving amongst ourselves. So it gave me the opportunity to visualize those things and to be a person that wanted to try to help and fix some of that foolishness. And I thank him for that. You know what I mean? I thank him for his hard work. I thank him for providing me the opportunity to not have to be out fighting for my survival every day that I walked out of the house. And then to give me the perspective to want to help people, because that's what he was doing, helping people. And he gave me the perspective to do the same thing.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad I asked that question for a couple reasons. Just personal note, like, I've always been thankful. My mom was a single mom for the majority of my childhood. There was a second marriage for part of it, but for the most part, she took care of things. And I'm just reminded of the privilege it was to be taken care of in a way that I could focus on school and do the things that quote unquote bettered my life, and
Yes.
then The other thing, though, that I love about what you shared is the reminder that when a large number of any population are busy surviving, it doesn't leave a lot of room to be worried about, political implications and changing laws and doing that.
Yes.
It's not that it's not a concern. It doesn't even necessarily mean they're not aware of what's needed. But when you're, going from one job to the next and just trying to make sure your kids are fed, then it just reminds me, your answer just reminds me of how difficult it is for us to organize
Yes.
when so many of us are in survival mode. So anyway, so thank you for taking the time to do that. Next, I want to ask you about accomplishments. I asked this question in two parts.
Yeah.
First, an accomplishment that means the most to you personally. And then I would say, which accomplishment is one that when others hear it, they go, oh, or wow, or really? All right, so let's start with the first one. Which accomplishment means the most to you personally?
I managed McDonald's for quite a few years. And thank God I had the opportunity to work for Black McDonald owners. I worked for a company in Baltimore called Broadway Pain. That was probably one of the first Black McDonald's in Baltimore. They had 3 locations when I started with them. I then went on after I left them and I went to work for another Black McDonald's that was owned by a lady by the name of Mrs. Brown.
Mm-hmm.
She also was in Baltimore, and she had about 4 McDonald's, and I think she gathered a couple more after I left there. And I also worked in Columbia for a lady named Mrs. Bell and her company, and that also was a Black McDonald's owner. That was an accomplishment for me because when you had the opportunity to manage normally young kids, and McDonald's, if I can say so, is probably one of the best places children can go to learn how to work. I know that it was in my tenure, and I can imagine that it still is, just looking into the restaurants and knowing what I know, because they teach you how to work. Yeah, I mean, if you go into any McDonald's, you'll notice the cleanliness and the organization, and that's been going on for years for that company. So again, all of the McDonald's that I worked for were Black owned, and they provided jobs to a lot of Black kids, and so you manage them, you know what I mean, and you teach them, you keep them on point, they keep you on point, and later on in life, when you have the opportunity to interact with them again, they thank you. They say thank you for what you did, the time you spent with us, what you introduced into our lives, the fact that you do teach them how to work. You do teach them organization, and they take that with them for the rest of their lives. Really, and I'm just really glad. I talked to some of the people that I used to manage, and they just say, "I thank you so much. You don't know how your interaction with us affected my life," and that's just I can't even put a value on that. It's just it's unexplainable. It's beautiful, and just to know that you have a part of that is just great.
Well, when you introduced yourself, you shared your children and the fact that you have, I know you said 8 grandchildren, and how many great-grandchildren? 2?
2, yes.
And to hear how moved you are by the contribution you were able to make, that you were in a position to make with all these young people, I just Man, your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are very fortunate to have someone who understands the impact of just conversations, observation, all of that. Like it's so evident in what you shared about the work you did. And I also want to thank you for bringing out that, you know, McDonald's is a franchise, and sometimes we forget that there are Black-owned businesses in our community that we may not associate as being Black-owned because they are a franchise, like a Subway or McDonald's or, you know, who knows. And so I appreciate you pointing out that.
And if I may add, the two
Please.
McDonald's that I worked for that were owned by the two ladies, one of them, one lady was in Baltimore County, and the other one was in Howard County. And the lady that was in Baltimore County wanted to sell and get out of the business. So she sold all of her stores to the lady that was in Howard County. So now this lady probably has 10, 15 McDonald's, you know, and that's just phenomenal. You know, it's just, you know, and like you said, people don't know that, but that whole deal was just phenomenal. And to know that it was handed off between two Black ladies. You know, it's beautiful.
And then what about the accomplishment that you get the wows about, or the really?
I'm a manager. You know, I believe that managers are born. You can't teach management. You can teach the principles of management, but a true manager is born. So anybody that learns the principle that's actually a born manager has enhanced abilities. The ones that are banking on just learning it, they're going to have some trouble, I believe. That's my personal opinion. But I also had a management type position when I worked at the cemetery. Again, the people were a little older that were managed there. So people, I guess the mystery surrounding funeral service and that whole light is an accomplishment for me that I see. I kind of get a little excited because this was an older group of people, and some were older than me, and I found a way to communicate with them and teach them how to be productive in cemetery sales.
Yeah. Okay, I'm hearing a theme. Bring out the best in people.
Well, I don't know about that, but you know, I think it goes all the way back to what I learned from my dad.
So Kevin, let's talk about words. What is a favorite quote, saying, metaphor, or book?
One of the better books that I've read was The Black History of the White House. Yes, it is quite interesting. It's just chock full of history, and another eye opener in vision into why we are where we are today, and how things haven't really changed that much outside of the fact that maybe it wasn't 17 or 1800, it's now 2000, but some of the same problems and some of the spin-off of the problems that existed back in that particular time still exist. And then to equate that to the White House, that's even more of a more phenomenal. I highly recommend that if anyone that would be interested or is a reader, that you do read The Black History of the White House. Have access to a dictionary, because he'll keep you in the dictionary.
Got it.
Yes, but it is a phenomenal book, and it's very telling of Black history in general, and then history with Black people and its association with the White House. Great. As a matter of fact, when I was reading it, it was so informative to me. I told my wife, I like, you order the book and we're going to read this together. It's phenomenal.
So what is a moment, person, conversation, or event that stands out as either changing the trajectory of your life or having a significant impact on your life?
When I got saved, it was a blessing that I did get saved, and I didn't realize it until I did. I had this real belief about the church and what's going on in the church. You know, the pastor, he's driving around in a big car and the people are suffering and, you know, they're just in it for the money and, you know, that whole false narrative. So I actually, when I was managing the McDonald's in Baltimore, I had a gentleman that used to come and sit with me. And we had a McDonald's that was really in the hot zone. So he would, and we would work overnight, 11 to 7. And he would come and he would just sit in the McDonald's with me and talk. You know, he never really pushed Christianity on me, but just his presence. He let me know he was an elder at the church and, you know, why don't I stop by? But he was never real forceful with it. And of course, I fought back, nah, because I had some other things I had planned on doing. Some life things came about. So I ended up at the church. So I get to the church and sure enough, there's a great big Mercedes sitting out in front, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Right, but I'm going in, and you know the church was in a renovated movie theater. Funny part was it was in a one of those movie theaters that showed triple X movies before it was a church. How funny is that? So, you know, I go in, I have a seat, I sit down, and, you know, this was new to me. They start singing and praise and worship came. And I was like, oh my goodness, you know how you get those little shivers that go through you when something excites you? Well, I was like, oh my God, they're singing so good. The harmony was just so beautiful. And I'm saying to myself, I'm coming back next Sunday to hear the singing again. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know who John Paul and Moses, and I don't know none of those people, you know. So
yeah,
and it's funny because my grandfather was a pastor, but he wasn't really in my life that much, because I was very young when he passed. But I didn't know any of those guys, you know. So I said, okay, I'm gonna come back next week. And I'm still like with this, you know, well, you know, these pastors, man, they collected money, they guys driving around in the big Benz. And so I came back the next week, and it was the church's anniversary, and they had collected an offering for the pastor, and my pastor's name is Bishop Jerome Stokes, and they had collected an offering, a love offering for him and his wife, you know, in recognition of the service that they were providing to the people. You know, they had the little ceremony, and they presented the money to him. So they were in the middle of preparing to move into a new church or do work, you know, to get out of that particular facility that they were. So I sat there and I watched them present that money to him. And he said, well, and the statement was, you know, I'll never forget it. And this was 15 years ago or more, 20, maybe 20 years ago. He said, my wife and I really appreciate that this love offering that you guys drew for us. He said, but we're going to put this money back into the church because we are looking to do something, you know. So that was money that was intended for their personal use. And their desire was to put that money back into the church, back into so basically going back into the congregation in order to move towards a new and better facility. So I was like, oh, this guy's not really all about the money, you know. And then as my walk continued, you know, we went right around the corner to a building that was at one time a handicap league. The building was gutted and turned into the facility that it is now. And a lot of the work was done by the brothers and sisters in the church. And I watched the pastor toil with the people. He came to work just about every day there. I watched him work hard to get monies together. I had the opportunity to go to his home and do some work. And so, you're looking to try to catch a person up, you know what I mean, for whatever foolishness reason that may be. And, it just wasn't there. Even when it turned the TV on, the TV was on like a Bible channel or a religious channel. Bibles open throughout the house. And I'm like, oh, wow, this guy's really, really living what he's preaching. And that was just really mind blowing to me. And so that helped. And then the topic, the work that I was doing in his home, I never liked sweating pipes. I was doing some home improvement work. And I never liked it. So putting this faucet in their bathroom, I sweat the pipes together, and I will check for a leak, and there's no leak. And I'm like, okay, thank you, Lord. I'm going home. So I go home. So his wife called me, and she said, Brother Jenkins, she said, we got a little problem. I was like, okay, well, what is it? She said, well, the faucet is leaking. Right, and the water is going into pastor's prayer closet, right? Yeah, that's what I said. So I was like, okay. So I went to their house. So I said, okay, well, Sister Marsha, take me in the. She said, oh no. She said, I can't do that. She said, you'll have to wait until Pastor gets here. And if he says it's okay for you to go in there, she said, you can go, but I can't just walk you in that room. Wow. So, yeah, that's what I said. You know what I mean? So that kind of nailed it for me. And then I just watched him give money just away to people that helped build a church. And he gave people cars and paid for people's insurance. And I really at one point in life had a hard time giving, and I just sat there and watched that man just give, and so that really had a lot to do with, I guess, the direction my life was pointed, because it certainly wasn't going in that direction prior to that. I promise you that.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That is what they call a powerful testimony.
Yes, yeah.
So let me ask you about a moment or event that highlights or puts a spotlight on being a Black man in the United States.
The Million Man March. That was one of the most powerful moments in my life also. To be a part of that, I don't think I can ever properly put in words what took place that day. And I don't think anybody that would try to tell the story could. You would actually have had to have been there to fully grasp the power and the love and the brotherhood and the message to really fully understand. And I don't believe the best writer could really express that. That was an experience that you would have to just live through to fully understand. So I have never experienced anything like it before nor after.
And I want to fully acknowledge that you said the best writer couldn't capture it. And I think you, even though you just shared your personal experience, like I get how moving it was. Like what I'm left with is just how moving, like I have the experience of hearts connecting.
Yes. Yeah, it was unexplainable, man. I mean, there were they played with the numbers as they normally do with us with anything. But there had to have been 1 million men there, right? And there was no incident. There was no disturbance. It was all love, you know. And, you know, they can say what they want about Minister Farrakhan, but he put that thing together, and there was a powerful message that was sent during that time. It was all love, man. That was one of the most phenomenal things I have ever been a part of. And like I said, you know, you can't capture what happened there in words, ever. Nobody. Even if they try to explain it, they really aren't. And as I watched, you know, because they had to pay for, I guess, something. So, you know, they just, you know, they asked for, like, I guess it would have been like something like asking for offerings at a church service. And people just passing money through the sky, and it ended up in buckets, right? But, you know, it was like from one brother to the next brother to the next brother till it reached the bucket. Next brother to the, it was phenomenal.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the first I've heard of that. I love that you shared that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So now I'm going to ask you about law enforcement. Have you had any interactions with law enforcement?
Well, yes. I mean, I've had a limited amount of interaction. You know, they try to make sure that you have some interaction with them as Black people. I think the most ridiculous interaction that I've had, and this was recently, I was en route to work, going to the funeral home. You know, so you go to the funeral home, dressed with your shirt and tie on, and you look halfway presentable, you know. And I'm driving down the street, and I see the police officer at the corner. And I drive by because, you know, I don't have a problem, you know, and I'm not creating a problem, so I'm going on about my business. So the next thing I know, you know, is they do this maneuver on you where they speed up behind you, you know what I mean? And I think they observe to see what your reaction may be, whether you make any false moves or, you know, I think that's a prodding maneuver. And so, you know, I'm driving because, like I said, I don't have a problem, and you shouldn't really have a problem with me. I'm going to work. About almost at work, these lights come on. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what in the world does this man, you know? But I pull on the parking lot of the funeral home, and I stop. You know what I mean? So the guy gets out of the car, right? Walks to the car, looks at me, right? And kind of like halfway speaks and says, "Oh, okay," and walks off. So I'm like, well, you know, why did you subject me to that foolishness?
Right.
You know, what was your purpose behind running up behind me, you doing your little prodding maneuver? You know, I know for certain you ran my tag number. Why? Because it's like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. I would be, you know, led to believe that if my skin was a little lighter than it actually is, I wouldn't have had to go through that foolishness going to work that morning.
You know, it's, for some reason, that story is, in the accumulation of responses to that question, that one really points to something that it's such a privilege to do these interviews because I'm getting an education. So I could rename this podcast the education of Robin Shine, because even though I know about the constant being stopped and all of that, something about this experience you shared where you're just on your way to work and there's no ticket, there's no name calling, there's none of that, but the fact that there's no peace.
Yes.
Like that's how I hear it, is like just driving down the street, there's an absence of peace, because at any time, even if it's just, I guess, just that prodding, like, it's so clear that this was just a form of domination.
Exactly.
Just from policing. This is just, this is a policy of domination. And the experience you shared is one that makes it, in my view at least, even more clear the insidiousness of this over policing. So
yes,
thank you.
Certainly. Thank
you. Which brings us to this question. Okay. If the United States was a woman, whether mother, lover, friend, neighbor, stranger, what would you say to her?
What I would say to the United States of America is, as a woman, is you're beautiful. Your mountains, your plains, and your oceans, but your spirit needs a whole hell of a lot of work. That's what I tell them.
Yeah. All right. What is love to you?
Love is an unexplainable phenomenon. Love is so spiritual that you really can't, in my estimations, put it in words. I think the greatest love that we experience is the love, for me, of Jesus. And you can't word that. And it's based on a relationship. Love is just unexplainable. I mean, I look back over my life and these 60 years that I've been here on this earth, and I went to Howard University. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as time passes and you move away from your friends, sometimes you lose contact, right? And thank goodness for Facebook. Yes, Facebook has provided the opportunity for communication. So I had the opportunity to meet up with some of my fellow dorm mates and college friends at the funeral, because the gentleman that passed away was very, very much popular. He was a Q, and we all coexisted at what was Slow Hall. And we was trying to survive together. And you know, we just had a relationship. It was like a family. And so I hadn't seen or talked to quite a few of these people in years until the funeral took place. So it opened up a door to reconnect with these folks. And as I reconnected with them, I realized that I love these guys because of the relationship that we had established and what we went through together, you know, and that they were such an intricate part of my life. And I can't explain what the love part is, but they're so important to me, you know, and they were so important to my life. And the importance of love is so, the phenomenon of love is so spiritual in its nature that I don't even think God would allow you to really put a definition on it, because I think love is all his. You know, and if we try to explain it, we as the imperfect people that we are, we'll damage it in some form or fashion. So I'm gonna leave it to God, and I'm going to say that love is God, and a relationship. You know, they say in the Christian religion, and I'm sure with any religion, that the relationship is important. You know, yeah. So all of that is in the same equation. Yeah, and it's yeah. You know, so.
I envision from what you shared. It might sound a little weird, but I picture this beautiful goo, this invisible goo. I've been watching this show. I know why I'm thinking of this now, because I've been
There's a show from the early 2010s called Eureka, and it's about some science town, you know, with all the geniuses together. Anyway, and everything, some laser, some goo, some blah, blah, blah. But in your description, I imagined some invisible goo that love is, it's what holds us all together.
Yes,
you know?
yes, so true.
So now I'll ask, what, Kevin, is something you've learned either through your profession, your training, your experiences, or adventures that you believe more Black men should know?
Well, as I shared, I was in the death care industry and I worked in a funeral home. And what I want these Black men to realize is that death is final. On too many occasions did I have the opportunity to look down on one of my brothers with his body riddled with hole, with his chest split open, with his organs removed and put in a bag. And I hope this is not too graphic, but maybe they need to hear this.
Yeah, go on.
Yes, with their heads split open from gunplay. I see too many of our brothers and sisters coming into the funeral home dead from fentanyl overdoses. Same experience. Chest split open, organs in a bag, and they taking their brain. I look down on these kids that come in here to this funeral home, and if you look in their face, so many of them, you can still see the baby in their face. But their life has ceased. They don't get to interact with anybody else that loved them. And then what you leave behind is a traumatized city. Because the family members and the mothers and the sisters and the aunts and the uncles and the homeboys are traumatized by the fact that you're not here anymore. And then you leave that here, right? And if we don't get the opportunity to deal with their trauma, they create more trauma. So it's a continuing attack on the community. And we have to learn our way out of killing each other with these guns that we don't manufacture, with these drugs that we don't bring into this country, but are so readily involved in our communities that has created a false economy in our community. And the funny part about that thing is, it's an economy. And it's not going to be addressed because there's so much money involved in the drug trade. You know, and we allow this in our community. We talk about the police and, you know, what they're doing in our community, and I'm 100% with that. You know, if they're mistreating people, they need to be addressed. But we need to address what we can up close and personal. And that's by stop sending our young brothers and sisters to the funeral home in a plastic bag for us to dress, to embalm, to put you in a box, make you cute, for your mom and them to come in and cry and spit all over you, and then leave them in a traumatic state of mind. We have to find a way to stop that foolishness. And it's funeral service let me a lot of experiences, and it showed me a lot of things. But what I took away from the most is we have to stop killing each other. You know, it has to stop.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you. So now that we've had this conversation, what, if anything, are you now present to, aware of, or see newly, or just any reflection that you have from this interview?
Well, first, thank you for the opportunity of this interview and providing the opportunity to speak into some others' lives. Sometimes we just don't know because we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then since we've had that opportunity, right, and then to have the opportunity to work in funeral service and to recognize the fact that we have to find a way to stop killing each other. We have to find a way to change the economies of our inner cities and provide an economy that is, first of all, productive. And then second of all, is that when we get the money in our communities, we don't put it on a jet plane out of our communities, that we find a way to recycle it and make it stay around and build in our communities. So I'm just thankful for the opportunity of this interview just to say what I said.
Yeah. And what did you get out of it personally?
What did I get out of it? Well, personally was, what I got out of it personally is that there is a sister out there that is concerned for the brothers and our existence. And the fact that she's providing a platform for us to be able to speak truth to life to other brothers, sisters, and those that care to listen. So that's what I get. I get out of it is the opportunity just to tell you thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Well, this has been a conversation that has really had me see things in a new light. And it remains kind of amazing for me that even though I'm asking the same questions to different men, yes, but it's the same questions. I love that I get something new. And like I said, your commitment to helping others, and it's not just helping others, because that's kind of cliche, but to bring out the best in others through your work, how you relate to people, but even in what you shared as your reflection, like the importance of, when I ask, what did you get out of it personally? And it's still about bringing out the best in others. And I just acknowledge you for being a stand for the best in others. Thank you for that, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. As you can hear, you do not want to miss any of these brothers. Make sure you subscribe. You can find more at our website, 365brothers.com, 365brothers.com. This is Rock and Shine. To listen is to love.